Hi students, welcome back and welcome to week 6, and this is a week when we get into looking at Southeast Asia, and so it's going to be a pretty rapid overview, but this is probably the part of Asian history that is least familiar to us, so I just want to introduce it to you. It's also fascinating. It means we're going to cover a lot of our major course themes today, or we're going to touch on them. We're going to look at very early societies in this region of Asia. We're going to look at different forms of government in this area. We're going to look at the interactions between this part of the world and Europeans, starting in around 1500 to the present. And we're going to look at the spread of religious and philosophical beliefs and ideas. And so we're going to begin with the prehistory of Southeast Asia. Now, Southeast Asia has some extremely old human remains, although it's difficult to say exactly how old, but we're confident that lower sea levels during the Paleolithic age meant that humans were able to migrate from the Asian continent and into Indonesia. So when I'm talking about Southeast Asia, I'm talking about everything that's east of India, so starting around here, and everything that is south of China. So this area all the way down into the edge of the red. And so we have claims of remains that are as old as 50,000 years. And so in this slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the oldest archaeological sites we have in Southeast Asia. In the Tavon Caves, we have evidence of pottery, tools, ornaments, and human remains. You can see an image of the Tavon Caves here as these very early remains and evidence of human life, these very early human societies living in caves as we see elsewhere around the world. The Hoabinhian site is the site that is where we have the earliest verifiable burials that are about 10,000 years old. So we have remains that archaeologists and historians have claimed are as old as 50,000 years. The ones that we feel more confident verifying their age are probably about 10,000 years old. Now, during the Neolithic period, we find human beings migrating from Indonesia back over to the mainland. And the migration that we have the most evidence for is called the Austronesian Expansions. Austronesian refers to the peoples who are living in the archipelago of Indonesia, and they're now migrating back to Southeast Asia. And the Austronesians by this point had developed ships called outriggers and catamarans. If you don't know what those are, I encourage you to look them up. Basically, they're pretty simple boats, but they have extra flotation lateral supports on the outside. And so that means that even though it's a pretty basic boat, it can cover long distances. And these Austronesians are really impressive sailors, and they're able to reach as far away into a remote area of the world like Micronesia, but you can see here they're also able to cross the entire Indian Ocean and reach the island of Madagascar. So from pretty early on, we find these individuals exploring areas outside of sort of what we might typically refer to as Asia. Moving forward to around 500 BC, so we don't have a whole lot of evidence for the BC period, but once we get to around 500 BC, we start to find evidence of some agricultural societies in Southeast Asia. We find evidence of the cultivation of crops, especially wet rice, in a very fertile climate. You think about how much rain, how fertile the jungles of Southeast Asia would be. This meant, one, it's very easy to be successful cultivating crops. And this means that you're going to produce surplus. The surplus is a necessary foundation for developing more sophisticated societies and the development of cities. So agriculture, once we have evidence of it, seems to develop very quickly and to be very successful in this region. And we also find that in this fertile climate, hunter-gatherer practices, they also remain current. So it's not as though, as it is in some parts of the world, you kind of have to choose one or the other. You become a farmer because it's not possible to live as a hunter-gatherer anymore. You don't make the transition to agriculture because it's too difficult to grow crops in your climate. This climate is fertile enough that we find both farmers and hunter-gatherers, and we find farmers who also live as hunter-gatherers. So this is a very fertile climate that incorporates lots of different ways of growing your food and is going to support the development of a society. When we come to some of the earliest Neolithic sites, first we can see the development of bronze objects. So copper and bronze productions we find at sites like Ban Chang, which is in northern Thailand. And then we also have the Phung Nguyen culture. This is in northern Vietnam. Similar story here. Copper and bronze remains from these regions. When we move further south, we find the Don Son culture. This is a little more modern. You can see we're now 1,500 years on from bronze production. We find more advanced bronze production, but we also find the production of iron. And you can see some of the tools that are being used here. Tools for war and for battle. Tools for farming and agriculture, and drums. This is a pretty cool drum from this region of the world. This drum weighs about 150 pounds, so about as much as an average-sized human, or a little below an average-sized human. So that's a pretty impressive drum that suggests a society that's relatively sophisticated. I mean, they're not scrapping to survive if they're using metal to make implements like this. What's interesting is that we have none of our evidence suggests that this work in bronze and iron was influenced by more established societies in China and India. The evidence that we have suggests that this developed pretty organically. And so remember, this was kind of a question, and I would say align this with our discussion of looking at how societies developed in all of the different regions that we're going to examine in this course. Do these developments work in bronze, work in agriculture, trade? To what extent do these things happen organically? To what extent are they driven by outside influences? As far as Southeast Asia is concerned, as far as the development of metallurgy, this seems to be something that develops organically in Southeast Asia, that these cultures and civilizations work out for themselves how to produce these objects. One more culture, this is the Sahun culture. This is from southern Vietnam, and here we see remains, metal remains again as well, but also ceramics that you can see at the top here, large ceramic finds. This seems to have been a kiln, so we have the mass production of pottery, but also jewelry and decorative implements like glass. Now we come to the ancient history of the region of Southeast Asia. And this Asian history is characterized by the Austronesian trading network. Remember that I said the Austronesian expansion kind of drives interaction between Southeast Asia and especially Indonesia with mainland Southeast Asia, but with the rest of the Indian Ocean basin and even with the Pacific. So we find that by 1500 BC, they're trading with Ceylon and India, and then they begin to trade as far away as China, as East Africa, and as far away as Madagascar. As far away as Madagascar to the west, and then over here to Micronesia to the east. So we have this trade, and trading coconuts, bananas, sugarcane, and this is kind of the exchange that's taking place. This is known as the Maritime Silk Road. It's a connection between East and West. When we talk about the Silk Road, we talk about the trading route that connected China with the West. The Maritime Silk Road is a Southeast Asian phenomenon that connects Southeast Asia with Africa and India and the rest of the Indian Ocean. So this is one of your key terms for this week. The Maritime Silk Trade is significant because it shows or it facilitates and reflects that Southeast Asia is interacting with a vast variety of different cultures around the basin of the Indian Ocean. I talked about the East Australasia trading networks. These are in New Guinea, just off your map here, and then other parts of the Pacific Islands. Okay, I'm going to halt this video here, and we're going to talk about Indianized kingdoms in the next video.